Welcome to the She Will Shine podcast, where we bring you the real stories of female business owners. My name is Danielle Price and I'm the founder of She Will Shine, a supportive business network for women. It's time to give a voice to women in business and discover their journey.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the She Will Shine podcast, another episode in lockdown, and we have the lovely Mander with us. Hi Megan, how are you?
I'm good, thanks Danielle. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you for being here. Now, Megan is the director and founder of Urbane Commercial. He founded in 2016 Urbane, a commercial property management and leasing specialist, and are driven by a passion to deliver superior results with empathy and professionalism. I like the empathy in that introduction, Megan. Is that something that you find important in your industry?
I find it very important in our profession, but I feel like there's a lot of real estate agents that perhaps don't have that empathy for their clients, and it's potentially about something else for them versus really looking out for the client's best interests. Possibly a bit general when you throw them into that category, but yeah.
A stereotype nonetheless.
Yeah.
A little birdie told me that you were working in McDonalds from the age of 15. Was that something you enjoyed?
Yeah, I loved it. I guess it was just a really good opportunity, one, to earn money. And I still remember that back then when I started, I was earning $4.92 an hour. That just sticks with me, that amount of money. I worked really hard at McDonald's and I really appreciated the training that they gave you. And I think it's really good training. I don't know whether they still have the same sort of things in place these days, but I think it was a really good foundation for learning, good work ethic, having sort of procedures and things like that in place. So I worked at McDonald's right up until maybe a couple of years after I finished high school and did a few things at the same time, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? I kind of found I was a checkout chick from 14 and 9 months or whatever it was that we were allowed to start working. And I was the same. I continued through with it up until I got my first full-time job. I loved it.
Yeah. And I think it was a bit about, other than the fact you were earning money, it was sort of a good way to connect with people your age. And yeah, I don't know, I really did enjoy it.
Yeah. And so from high school, was it always real estate for you?
So after high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was working at McDonald's. I was working in a bakery as well with a girlfriend, and she decided that she was going to go and study real estate at TAFE in Adelaide. And I just thought that was a great idea and just jumped on board that and studied it, and then got my first job in residential real estate in Adelaide as a property manager. Actually, I think initially I was the receptionist. So that's sort of where you start your career in a real estate office, or answering phones and things like that, and then became an assistant property manager.
Obviously, you were enjoying it to stay in the industry and climb the ladder slowly.
Yeah, and I think that was important, as in there were opportunities to grow within the employer or within the industry. There was lots of different things that you could do.
Was it male dominated at that stage, Megan, or was there a fair mix?
I think back in Adelaide, in the office that I worked in, which was a family office, it was quite balanced in that it was a small office, so there were a couple of property managers. But, I mean, it's a very male-dominated industry. Not so much in property management. It is more female-dominated, but in sales, it's obviously highly weighted with males, yeah.
So now you're in Melbourne. What was the move from Adelaide to Melbourne? Was it career-wise? Was it personal?
It was personal, but I think everybody in Adelaide wants to escape when they're a teenager, and everybody wants to go to Melbourne, essentially, because it's, I don't know, the cool thing to do. So, yeah, that's what I did, but I moved here with my partner at the time. And yeah, I've got my first job in an agency in Melbourne, just as a residential property manager. And then I just got sick of working weekends more so than anything else. So I wanted to get into commercial because that was more a Monday to Friday
Yeah, of course.
type role.
Yeah. And did you find it different? Like what were the sort of similarities within the commercial and residential, and what were the differences?
Yeah, absolutely different. I mean, different legislation, different problems. With residential, it's sort of more personal. So you're dealing with, residential tenants. And so they take things, or they find problems, or there are problems, let's say, but they take it really personally. Whereas in commercial, different problems, bigger problems, and they become quite litigious because you're dealing with business owners essentially versus, mums and dads and families, or things like that. So it was really different. I had an opportunity to work again in a sort of suburban family run agency, and I was meant to work under the wing with the commercial property manager, who was also part of the family who owned the business. And not long after I started there as the assistant property manager, he left for whatever reason. And so I got thrown in the deep end with, commercial property management, and didn't really know anything about it. But it was a really good opportunity to, find out everything that you needed to find out. And there wasn't really anyone else in the business to ask those questions other than the director, and he possibly wasn't all that approachable. So you had to go and find that out for yourself. I think about it now, and it really sort of made me think on my feet and try and work out a problem and try and solve a problem without having to go to him, or, just work things out for yourself.
So how old do you think you were at that stage?
So I was 20 probably.
Yeah. So very young still.
Yeah, youngish. Yeah. So still sort of living the life, but also I was really, really focused on a career and trying to set myself up financially. And I think because of those values that were instilled back in the day at McDonald's, I mean, it was only 4 or 5 years prior, you really had a good work ethic. So, you did really want to excel and do the right thing and work hard, and you realised that there was reward in that, not only for your career, but also financially. And as I said before, in real estate, there is really that path that you can sort of work up the chain.
Did you find it difficult, seeing as though you'd left Adelaide, and I presume your family were all in Adelaide, and came to Melbourne? Was that something that you struggled with at the time?
Not really. I mean, it's always a little bit difficult not having family around, more so now. But I think in your 20s, you've got your work family as such, because you spend so much time in the workplace, you become good friends with people. And also you're quite social. So, you're constantly going out, and I had a partner at the time, so I was fine. I was loving life.
Weekends were spent out partying.
Busy.
Yes.
Yeah. And not doing inspections every Saturday. So effectively you had your weekends free.
Yeah, that's right. I guess you came to Melbourne at the right age then, because suddenly you were available to do whatever took your fancy on the weekend, and you were at the right age to really just enjoy it.
Yeah.
So how long were you at that firm for?
I was there for about 4 years. And then I just sort of became, like, I'd sort of gone as far as I could in the commercial space within that company, because they were quite small. We had grown the commercial business from about 100 properties, I think, to 200 and something over the period I was there. But the assets that we were working with were small, sort of single fronted shops, warehouses. And I just wanted to keep learning. I didn't feel like I could learn any more in that environment. So I went and worked for one of the city firms and managed shopping centres for about 3 years after that. And that was quite diverse. It was a totally different class of assets and different clients. So a small portfolio, but it was far more complex than what I was used to. So again, it was another opportunity to learn and grow and deal with different things.
And in that role, did you have like a mentor? You said in the previous role that person had moved on. So did you find that in this role?
Again, I was working direct with the head of the department at the time, and both of those people that I've worked with were quite, they had quite strong characters. They were male. They were quite demanding. And it wasn't, I don't know, it was a difficult relationship to some extent, but I also did learn a lot from both of them because they just wouldn't stand, they wouldn't stand for anything. I remember actually in the other business in Hawthorne, he was really particular about being on the phone for a short period of time. And he, back in the day, he would stand next to your like telecom commander phone. And you know how they used to have like how long you've been on the phone for? And he would stand next to your desk, and you weren't allowed to be on the phone for more than 3 minutes. And he would stand there and he would tap on you, your desk.
God.
That you, yeah, right. So that you'd been on the phone for too long, and you're sort of like, hey, I'm trying to deal with a problem here, and I'm talking to your clients. But, he would be there like, get off the phone. Like, you need to move in.
Yeah, hurry it up. Yeah.
Problem. And look, the next boss was again quite particular, not quite to the same extent, but very short, very blunt. And, you did sort of have to tread very carefully in that environment. And as much as I probably didn't like it at the time, it did teach me a lot about, I guess, how to work with people as well, and how to get the best out of someone is not always to be like that.
Did you kind of, store it away in the back of your brain, if I'm ever a boss to someone else, I'm not going to act like this? Have those little experiences, you kind of keep them in the memory bank and go, I'm not going to do it like that.
Yeah, that's true. But one thing I did learn from one of those bosses is they said 24 hours is a long time in real estate, right? So what that means is you've got to return a call to someone. You've got to get back to someone because they're waiting for you. If you call a real estate agent and they don't call you back, you're sort of like, hey, mate, like what's going on? It's really not that hard to return a call, or just let someone know I'm still working on that, or I don't have an update for you, but just getting back to someone. And I think that's still, one of those things that I've really held on to, and ensure that most of the time that you do just provide someone with an update because they are expecting that from you.
Were there inklings of running your own business at this stage, or was it still you were happy to work for somebody else?
After I got married, actually, I think things sort of changed for me, and like I was that really driven career person, and then I was overworked. I was working long hours, and I was probably overworked. I had too many assets that I was looking after, and after I got married, I was like, oh, well, here you go. What can we do now to make my life a little bit easier? Obviously, I wanted to focus on having a family. So I wasn't able to negotiate reducing my portfolio. So I resigned from the company I was working for. I just decided to do some consulting. So at that point, I felt like I'll find work. And I did. I actually went back to my first boss and I did some consulting with their business right up until my daughter was born. And then went back to them 6 months after, or maybe even 3 months after my daughter was born, and started doing part-time work. I didn't think at that point that I would start my own business. I just wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Like, I enjoyed real estate and I was obviously really passionate about it, but I just didn't want, after having a daughter, I didn't want to be overworked, and wanted obviously to focus on her as well. Yeah.
Did you find that other females who had left to have children went back to work, or was it sort of the path that was kind of the most taken and the easiest taken to a degree to not go back?
It's interesting because there's not really that many, I didn't know that many female commercial real estate agents. I think in residential, a lot of them go back on a part-time basis. So like, I had an expectation that I would go back to work, but at that point I didn't think that I would go back to full-time work. But to be honest, I really had a bit of a rough trot with my daughter, and I had postnatal depression and everything, and I just really wanted to, I didn't enjoy that time at home, so I just wanted to get back to work. But I just didn't know in what capacity. But I ended up going back to full-time work somewhere around 6 to 9 months after having my daughter.
Did you feel a bit more yourself again once you were working?
Yeah. So it was sort of like, you have a purpose again, because I was so career driven. Being focused as a mum, I felt it was really unnatural. And because it was difficult and I wasn't in a good place, I just sort of wanted to move on from that, essentially.
There's so much going on in those first few months. Like, it's life-changing regardless of the circumstance that you were in previously. But it is really hard because suddenly you're this person, then you're expected to be someone else. And just overnight, it's a really difficult time for women.
Yeah, there's no rule book, is there? And
no,
I just wasn't a sleeper. And it just put a lot of pressure on, as it does with everybody, I guess, on relationships. And it was just really tough. And your sense of worth. So I just wanted to get back to work and, ride that career cycle again. Yeah.
And so did you put her into daycare? How did that kind of work for you?
She was in daycare, and my ex-husband's mother-in-law was also looking after her. But I was so embarrassed, I guess, of being a mum at the time. When I took my job, I didn't even tell my boss that I had a child.
Oh, wow.
Because I didn't want that to affect my chances of securing the job.
Yeah.
And then I think in the first week when I started, I was like, oh, by the way, I have a daughter and I might have to come in late sometimes. And I think he was just like, what are you talking about? You never told me about that. But it's really, your sense of mind and purpose. Yeah, I was quite confused at the time, I think, about what was important for an employer.
Yeah. How long do you think it took you to kind of settle back into feeling okay on both sides?
Look, it was a long process because she just didn't sleep for years. So I think sleep deprivation, having postnatal depression, going back to work, not feeling good about yourself, it took a couple of years. But it was great to be back in the workplace, to have that sense of purpose outside of being a mother.
Yeah. And did you have any other support around you?
Look, obviously I had my husband and his family, but there was, without having my own family here, it was quite difficult. And it's also not the sort of thing that you talk to your girlfriends about. And none of my girlfriends, and this is obviously a little bit deep, but none of my girlfriends had children. So I was the first out of all of my friends in Melbourne to have a child, because I wanted to have a child when I was 30, and bang, like that, it happened. In hindsight, I probably should have waited a bit longer, but it was obviously a little bit difficult. So I think there was a lack of support, which obviously didn't help things.
Yeah, that's right. And you can't see other people in the same situation and what's considered normal and what's not considered normal, and what are the signs.
So after I had my daughter, I secured a full-time role for an international commercial real estate agency. And at that point, I was managing, again, more I managed a portfolio of police stations for a publicly listed company, and I also managed a couple of office buildings. So it was quite complex, high-class assets and clients, and really enjoyed it, but just felt like I was a number, and I was surrounded in a big office with a couple of hundred people, all sort of quite confident real estate agents, and I just didn't feel like I really belonged there. But I could have just worked there for the rest of my life, really. Got paid an excellent amount of money, but just wasn't satisfied. And some of my clients from my initial employer back when I started in real estate had actually followed me. So I was managing their assets at that company as well. And they were like, why don't you start your own real estate business? And I was like, it's not very secure. Why would you do that? And then it just sort of planted that seed that why wouldn't you do that? And it was sort of, I think, it just planted that seed in me, like, there's no reason that my clients really needed to be with me under this massive corporate banner paying excessive fees when really they just want this person managing their assets. So it was sort of like a value proposition, I guess, as well, that I was thinking, this is a bit unfair. What do I want to do?
Did you find, because obviously there was a really good working relationship between yourself and your clients, for them to say that to you, and for you to think, okay, yes, I can do this, and these clients will come with me?
It was sort of like, at that point there was, I think, 6 clients and 15 properties. And I was like, man, there's no way you could make a living out of that amount of money. But it was sort of working out, well, what do you value? What's important to you? What do you want to achieve in your career? What's more important, money or the meaning behind what you're doing, essentially? So it was just, look, it took me a couple of years to work up the courage to do it. But I did it, and I actually spoke to my director at the time and said, look, this is what I'm planning to do. There's no point these clients being here. And it's really about the relationship, which I think you don't get with larger corporations. Yeah, so I started really, really small, and literally was not earning enough money to take a salary. I mean, as you do in the first few years of business, but just sort of, paying the bills, I guess.
You sort of look at your fellow workmates and see their career paths. Did you see anyone doing similar?
No. I had one other sort of mutual colleague from one of my earlier employers who had set up a residential business, and I did know a couple of females that had also set up residential businesses. But other than that, but they weren't that close to me. But other than that, no, not really. So it was a real, I guess I sort of wanted to prove something to myself as well. I'm that sort of person that when you get an idea in your head and you decide that's what you're going to do, you're going to give it absolutely everything to make sure it works. I mean, I was doing Uber driving. I haven't really told anyone this, but I was doing Uber driving for the first 6 months at the same time as running my business, because I just didn't have any money.
Yep.
I didn't have any spending money. So, and I didn't actually start my business until I had separated from my husband. So there wasn't anyone else supporting me.
No other options.
Yeah.
You had to stand on your own 2 feet.
Yeah. So I've actually never told anyone that, but there you go. Just told everyone.
There you go. There's nothing wrong with that. You did what you had to do.
No secrets anymore. I feel like
no.
Embrace it, right?
That's it, exactly. But that's the thing though, when you've got your heart set on something, it's like, well, what do I need to do to get there? Yeah, and that was one of the things that you needed to do. So how old was your daughter at this stage?
How old is she? 11. So she was, 7?
Yeah. From that point, what was the first thing you did to start your business?
So I was still employed for the first few months while I was getting things off the ground, and doing all the website and things like that. And then it was just, it was starting with those clients and getting those properties on board and sort of just getting that set up, even though there was only about 15 properties, just making sure that, you had the systems in place and things like that. And then it was just lots of conversations with people, lots of cold calls, lots of coffees, telling people what you were doing. And I think people thought I was stupid, to be honest. I remember an old client saying to me, oh, you mustn't be that serious about it because you don't have an office. And I was like, hang on a second, I'm more serious than the agent that you've got managing your properties now. I didn't say this to her because I've got everything sort of on the line here, and it's me, and I'm really passionate about it, and you're going to get me to deal with, not because in property management people move on. You might have a property for 10 years as an investor, but you might have 10 property managers during that time. So someone that's managing their own business and managing that property essentially has a lot more, and I can't think of the word, but riding on retaining that property than another sort of big business. So just lots of conversation, and I managed to secure an office building within the first 6 months of my business, and it was actually a referral from another commercial real estate agent who were referring it outside of the agency that they worked for, because they knew that I was good at good at my job, and I knew what I was doing, and that I would give that client the right service, whereas they didn't think their business would do that. So
isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So that was sort of the, I don't know, the, what do you call it, like that just sort of started things for me, and I guess it also gave me the confidence. Gave me the confidence that you can do this. I mean, I went in on a pretty low fee at the time to secure the business, because it was really important, and now I don't do that. Now I value the service that we provide and I provide, and I mean, I've learned over the last 4 years, you drop your fees, you know you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
You're attracting the wrong client if you're going to, not that I've ever discounted my fees to a point that makes no sense, but yeah, you're attracting the wrong client. So now I'll turn down properties. You know, if you're not prepared to pay my base rate, I appreciate you being interested, but thanks very much.
There's someone else who can help.
Yeah, and there absolutely is. Yeah. Real estate agents have a reputation for not valuing the service that they provide. Yeah. In my opinion.
In your opinion. Did you find, you said earlier that, you know, other people thought that you were silly going through, you know, creating your own business. Did you kind of use that as motivation, as in, I'm going to show them? Yeah.
I mean, don't we all?
Yes.
When somebody tells you you can't do something, I think it just instills something in you, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'll show them.
It's kind of like dangling the carrot.
Yeah, exactly. So how many years has it been now that you've had the business? Yeah,
so it's 4 years. And what a year this has been. To be honest, this year I've sat on the fence about whether I should have started my own business, because commercial real estate, as are all businesses, are really being hit at the moment, because understandably tenants don't want to pay their rental and don't have to. They're protected by the regulations. So there is an impact financially, but also emotionally. It's obviously quite tough dealing with problems all of the time. But I think it's also an opportunity to learn about how to resolve issues and how to move forward and look outside, I guess, the box that I've been working in.
And have you found, like, people towards you, have they been understanding of that? Because, you know, obviously in your industry, and we have accountants in our She Will Shine membership as well, who are really feeling the brunt of this, and sometimes the wrong, you know, they're getting the wrong end of the stick. So how has that been for you?
Yeah, look, they have on both sides, both the tenants and the landlords have been quite understanding. And obviously now with online learning and not being as accessible, I think there's certainly been, a lot of understanding from them both. Unfortunately, a lot of the time we are essentially the meat in the sandwich, and we might just be delivering a message that neither party really wants to hear, but it's not necessarily our opinion, or it's not our decision to make, and so we are the bearer of bad news. So it's quite challenging. There's a couple of difficult cases where people won't listen to you and won't see reason, and are not also looking at the bigger picture. So it's, we can be a psychologist like the accountant can, because we're dealing with problems. People's businesses are affected, their livelihoods affected. It is really draining. Yeah.
And are you, you know, is the industry receiving support through like a governing body because of all this?
Yeah, so the Real Estate Institute of Victoria is our industry association, essentially, and they're quite supportive and sort of feeding through lots of information. But it's just one of those scenarios where it's trying to educate both the landlord and the tenant about what the regulations say, and also about trying to get them to understand that, you know, it's nobody's fault. It's not like there was a bad business owner who is not paying his rent because he runs a bad business or he's done something dodgy. We're in this situation because of a global pandemic. So there just has to be a little bit of give and take. But from a landlord's perspective as well, you know, they have a lease, they haven't done anything wrong. They don't receive any of the incentives that a tenant perhaps has access to, and yet they're affected. And some of those people are mum and dads that rely on the income. So it's a real, catch-22. So I thought, would I prefer to be working for an employer right now? I don't think so. At least in your own business, you can make those decisions. If you can't work, you know, today and you need to take a break, you can take a break. I tried to more recently think, you know what, it's not urgent. You know, it's not critical that you respond to this today. You can step away, have a think about it. As long as you are responding and keeping the parties in the loop, you know, things are not going to fall apart overnight because, you know, you haven't sort of resolved something.
Yeah. And how have you found, so you were working in an office and now you're working from home with your daughter home studying, home learning. How are you finding that switch back to working from home again?
Look, online learning is challenging. I don't mind working from home as much. I feel sorry for my daughter a little bit because it's more the interruptions, and she knows that, you know, it's a bit stressful and I'm highly strung, and there just seems to be a lot of breaks and a lot of interruptions. But bless them, they just need to be at school, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, hopefully soon. Now, we haven't talked about this prior to our interview, but I know that you started running marathons.
Oh, yes.
So how long ago did that start?
I started running actually when I got divorced, because I needed to do something. I was pretty unhealthy at the time. I ran my first marathon in 2018, and I've now become an addicted runner. So this year, unfortunately, all of my races have effectively been cancelled. So it's quite devastating, but I've got a treadmill at home. So I run 50, 60, 70 Ks a week, if not on the treadmill outside.
So you're still motivated to continue the marathons beyond 2020? Absolutely.
Yeah. So I've run a couple of ultra marathons, so 50 Ks. I had 2 ultra marathons this year. I possibly will do a 50 or 100 in December, but I'm just waiting to hear whether that's still on. So running sort of keeps me sane, but it's not that great for your body because it's like high impact.
Yeah. What goes through your head when you're running for that long?
My mind is constantly going. More recently, I've been thinking creative things about business. My main goal this year was to run 100 Ks, but in the first lockdown, I thought, you know what, be kind to your body. You've got a bit going on, maybe don't do that. And so I actually gave up that dream. Lockdown number 2, I'm like remotivated about it.
Back on it.
Yeah. I'm like, you could do this. And I've also thought about turning it into a fundraiser for Are You OK? I've contacted them actually. I'm waiting to hear back from them to see if I can fundraise for it. I think about a lot of things, but I also listen to podcasts if I'm at home on the treadmill, or I've watched a million docos on ultra running this lockdown. I don't know. The mind doesn't actually switch off unless you're listening to something or watching something, but I find it really helpful.
Did you run like in high school, or was this like a whole new thing?
No, I played hockey.
Yeah.
I wasn't very fit really. I think as I was approaching 40, I was like, you know what, you've got to do something here. I got hit in the head playing hockey twice, so I've decided that hockey's not that safe for me. Running's safer, but just not good for your body. Yeah. Last year I ran the New York Marathon with a fractured tibia. Don't recommend it, but the body can do anything if your mind wants to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing I ask, because like marathon, you have to have your mindset in the right place to keep going.
Yeah. Love it.
I find that really interesting. So everything that's happened, and I guess this could have been a question at the start of 2020, which may have a different answer now, but what do you foresee moving forward?
Look, it's a challenging time. It's really dependent on what happens in the industry, to be honest, because the business could really change. I mean, I will focus on trying to acquire more office buildings and things like that. Retail is going to be really tough. So our business is retail, commercial, office and industrial, and it's probably about 40% retail, and retail is really going to struggle. So it's going to be a tough asset class. The business will still be around, but it will be a different environment. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I was a little bit bored with the business at the beginning of the year, so maybe it's that cycle and you're sort of questioning what can you do differently and things like that. So COVID has really flipped that around, and it has been good in a way to, I guess, reinvigorate what I was doing essentially and getting back into the business again. And I have sort of been thinking about outside of the box, whereas before I was sort of like, okay, what are we doing? We're bringing a partner on. It's certainly given me another lease of life, I guess, with regards to the business.
Yeah, it's a challenge now that you've got in front of you that you need to overcome and adapt in whichever way you see fit.
Yeah, that's right. For all of us, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've all got to change to see what we just think we don't know. There's that uncertainty as well with what's coming. So we're constantly trying to adapt as we're living through it, but there's also the uncertainty of what's to come. How's life at home with your daughter though? Are you enjoying seeing more of her?
It's special, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be honest, it's whilst it's challenging, it's rewarding in a way, because you do just, I mean, you're not rushed. You don't have to rush to the office. I mean, right now I'm not allowed to, as a real estate agent, go to any of my buildings unless there's emergencies. So you can spend that time with them. I'm not 100% focused on her all of the time, but we won't get this time again where you spend so much time alongside them. You know, you're listening to their learning. You're seeing them engage with their teachers and classmates. You don't see that. I mean, I don't know how people are teachers, because I find it quite frustrating when you're hearing their questions and things like that. But, you know, they need to be in the classroom essentially, but we will make the most of what we do have. We're still so fortunate. You know, we have a house, we're healthy.
So Megan, what do you think has been the highlight?
I guess having a successful business, because I probably didn't think that I could do it either. I'm not your typical real estate agent, and I do struggle with accepting that you're good at what you do and people want you to manage their properties because, you know, you are a leader in your field. I get a little bit uncomfortable with that. So, you know, sometimes you just have to sit back and really think about what you do and how you do it and why you are where you are. Personally, I mean, there's still a lot of things that I'm working on for myself, as a mum, as a business owner, you know, so yeah, but I think it's really just about accepting that you do have a good business and you are good at what you do and acknowledging that.
Thank you so much for your time today, Megan. We had some tech issues earlier on, but we got there. There was no dogs barking in the background.
No dogs. No, they're probably at the door waiting to come in.
Thanks for joining us on the She Will Shine podcast today. We'll have another episode for you very soon. See you next time.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode of the She Will Shine podcast, we invite you to check out shewillshine.com.au. She Will Shine is the essential support network you need to grow a thriving, meaningful business. We can help you grow your network, connect and develop genuine relationships, be supported and support others in building and growing a successful business on your terms. Say goodbye to working alone and become a member at shewillshine.com.au.